So this page could have 50 things on it. And like I said, there's a whole other presentation we have where we just really go through all the attributes of a project manager and what that role considers. So this doesn't begin to touch on all of that. But to really pick on a few of the key ones, leadership is, to me, if I were to boil it down, it's all about, you've heard people say, if you think you're a leader, turn around and see who's following you. Are you the kind of person and the kind of organization that's providing guidance, providing service? It's this whole service leadership attitude. A role of leadership is not a reward. You're not given that because you've earned that and now you can sort of rest on your laurels. The idea behind leadership is you're in a position to improve things, to make people better, to make projects better, to make your organization better. So it's understanding, does your organization understand leadership? Do they respect leadership? And are there consequences for people in leadership positions that, in fact, are not providing true leadership? Conflict resolution, I think in our industry, I don't know what it is in our DNA as architects, but we are just sort of known as being terrible business people. And I think that the key problem with our ability to be good business people is we don't like conflict. And I don't want to paint everybody with that brush, but certainly it's enough people that that's kind of the buzz. You know, architects are just they're not good at conflict. They just sort of want to walk away from it. So whether that's conflict with your client, conflict with your consultants, conflict with your employees, it's something that one of the things we have to be able to ingrain, we have to be able to train people is conflict is healthy. Conflict is good. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, I can guarantee you, I know you all deal with conflict every day, especially anyone on this call that has kids. How can you have kids and not deal with conflict on a daily basis? And somehow we seem to manage that at home, whatever that might be. Now, I don't suggest you go home and go back to work and spank your client or anything like that, but we certainly know how to deal with that. For some reason, we're not very good at it when we get into the business place. And negotiation, all negotiation is conflict resolution. Because conflict resolution is nothing more than two people or more having a different opinion about something. And the resolution is just coming to some common ground. So that's what negotiation is. We've presented something to the client in the way of whatever proposal we've presented, and they've taken acceptance to some aspect of it. So whether that acceptance is to the actual dollar amount or to the scope we've defined or the terms or the risk we want to take, schedule, whatever those things are, the client has taken some exception to it. And the clients we deal with on a regular basis, they're not doing this every day. They're selling sheep or whatever they do, and they deal with conflict every day. They have people coming in and saying, hey, it's going to cost this to get new train cars. And they have a healthy negotiation process and have a healthy business relationship dealing with what they're going to pay for those train cars. All of a sudden, they need to build a warehouse for their trains, and they hire an architect. The architect submits a fee. That client is prepared to have that same kind of healthy business discussion and negotiation with the architect. And so when they go back to the architect and say, well, I think your fee is 20% high, I think these clients are stunned initially when we just sort of raise our hands and say, okay, just don't hurt me. You know, if you want the 20%, that, you know, we back away from that conflict. And the problem with that is, well, twofold. One, you've ended up negotiating a bad deal that maybe your company can't really live with. But in addition to that, whatever that initial experience is with that client, you set the tone for the rest of that project. So if you've got a project that's a year long, 2 years long, 3 years long, whatever it is, if you went into that initial business discussion with that client and just broke down and gave the client everything they asked for, well, the client's going to say, well, God, this is going to be easy. Every time they ask me for additional scope, every time they ask me for a change in schedule, every time they ask me for anything, I'm just going to say boo and watch them run away. So we have basically established a core business relationship and experience for the remainder of that job. And then communication skills, I don't even think I need to talk about that other than to say oftentimes we take it too lightly, because the ultimate result of contracts, the result of defining goals and expectations, the result of resolving conflict, the result of almost everything that goes on a job happens through some form of communication. And if we're not comfortable speaking, we don't write well, if we can't do these things, then we're going to end up with problems as well. So these are some basic skills, and then there's 50 others, but if you can't get sort of this area down, the whole project is starting off on the wrong foot. And then, as I've said a couple of times, this idea of defining for the project management role, what's expected of that role. I've seen far too many organizations where they say, well, we don't want to be sort of boxed in by definitions and we let people do what they want to do. Well, you know what? People like being boxed in a little bit. You've probably heard time and time again where children who tend to have less discipline in their life as kids because parents are, oh, I just want to be their friend and I don't want to discipline them. And if they want to, all of a sudden they find when those children get older, they find it very hard to assimilate to society because they've never grown up with rules, and they find that they're actually longing for some structure and some rules. And the same thing applies in our organization. It doesn't mean you have to be completely bureaucratic and to the point where people can't breathe, but some definition in this particular case around defining what a person's roles are and what your expectations are for them helps them know, A, what it is expected, but B, how it is they're doing, if they're actually meeting those expectations. So these were just a couple of examples, and you probably were reading them as I was talking, but they have to be collaborative, which is a big part of the leadership piece. They have to be able to define and communicate goals of the project to the entire team and provide that leadership to that whole team. And then a part that we often don't think about, the client is something obvious. We deal with clients every day, and we have to be able to do these things. We have to listen. We have to give them guidance. We have to communicate regularly. We don't just want to communicate with a client when there's a problem, which is, again, this notion that, well, golly, I think the client owes me some more money, and we put it off to the point where we realize our finances are so bad, I have to go ask the client for the money. And if that's the only time the client's hearing from you, well, hell, this is the 21st century. They've all got caller ID. If the only time your number shows up on their caller ID is when you want to complain about something or ask for money, chances are they're going to stop answering your phone call. So it's a good habit to get into. It's a good practice to promote within your leaders in your organization to say, just get in the habit of regular dialogue with your clients. Talk to them about how the job's going, about things that are going well, about things that aren't going so well. But have just a regular dialogue with them so they know to expect updates from you on a regular basis. But what we often forget about is we need to have equally as healthy a relationship with our consultants. Our consultants are a key part of the delivery of this project, and especially where a consultant is contracted to you. Oftentimes they're contracted directly to the client, but sometimes they're contracted to the architect or the engineer. And we need to make sure, just like in our contracts, we want to make sure our scope is very clear. We want to make sure the terms are very fair. We need to do the same thing with our consultants. Let's not complain about being beat up by a client on terms and fee and scope, and then turn around and beat up our consultants for the same things. And then always be an advocate for your consultant. Don't throw them under the bus when there's a problem on the job. Stand by their side. Help everyone as a team get through the problems together. So what are some of the things in talking to organizations that have decided to sit back? They've done that. How do I stack up? They've sat back and looked at their own organization. And then they've said, well, what are some of the benefits we should expect if we're going to go to the trouble of designing a system, putting in training in place, putting processes in place, getting the right tools in place to make this as efficient as possible? If I do all of that, what should I expect to get out of it in return as an organization? And I can tell you for a fact, A, from my years at HOK, but also from some of the clients I've worked with since then, if you put in place the right processes, the right policies, the right training, you will get better contracts. The contracts will be, the relationship between the fee and the scope will be better defined, which results in better fees, which typically result in higher profits, higher margins on the job. And you should reduce your claim 2 to 4%. I've known organizations, once they've gone through this effort and put in place kind of good, sound project management practices and a culture around that, once that had taken place, which can take a year or 2 years, depending on the type of business and size, once it's in place, their claims have dropped. And I saw one organization where their claims went from around that 4% number. So they're close, maybe 3.5%, down to less than 1% a year. So, if you're a $100 million company, you just saved yourself a couple $1 million right there. Your clients, well, if you're communicating better with them, you're communicating regularly, you're defining goals with them, chances are you're going to meet their expectations better. If you've got a scope and a schedule in your contract that's better defined than maybe what you're doing today, the odds of being more timely with delivery of the work is going to be better. And I think one of the most important things you can get out of this with your client is to become that trusted advisor to the client. 30, 40 years ago, architects were sort of that sole trusted advisor to the client. And over those last 30 or 40 years, we've had the development of construction managers, program managers, the design build process. We've had all these things that have sort of inserted layers between that relationship between the architect and the client. And there's no reason we can't recapture that. And the way we recapture that is to develop that experience for the client with us that makes them want to come to us as a trusted advisor. This whole idea, getting back to internally our work, if you've got the right processes in place and you're now able to work more consistently within and across your organization, your work product should be better, your quality management, quality control should be better. All of those result in fewer costs associated with claims or redoing work. And then, just like I did before, saving kind of the best for last, your people. You now have people that know what their career path is, know what's expected of them from a daily coming into work every day, whether it's their overall role and career path or it's that particular project. Not just coming in every day and finding out that day what to do that day, but have no idea what they're going to be doing the next day. Believe me, if that's the kind of environment they're in, those are the kinds of people that are going to be that 7% that leave. And then this whole idea of staff development. You're helping to grow them. You're challenging them. And the best way to do that is not through, be careful how I say this, because it's critical that you have training. It's critical you have processes. It's critical that you define the right degree of that. But the best learning that people get is not sitting in training. And I'm not saying that to say don't do training. But I'm saying the best training people get is watching people around them work, watching their supervisors do their job. That's how they learn the best. So be the best you can be in addition to providing them the resources they need to become stronger professionals.